is the Forge Audio Network, your official source for all things Forge FC. Here's your host, Anthony Urciuoli.
Hey, Forge fans, it's been a while. I almost said, hey, strangers, and that would have made it weird, but it's been a couple of weeks, but we're back. Your home of the reigning, defending, undisputed Canadian Premier League champions, Forge FC. It's time that we take you all the way back to the beginning of the season and break things down in thirds, right? It'll all come together. There's a theme happening here, but it'll be the first third of the season, second third, and then the final third. And in that span, we will also break down the club more. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of the club this season. We'll break down the defense, the midfield, the forwards, hence the defensive third, middle third, attacking third, final third. Trust me, it's all going to come together. But this is part one. We look at the first third of the season, and we're going to be joined by Alex Gangué-Ruzic, CPL soccer analyst, One Soccer, canpl.ca. He's going to join us and break things down in this episode, starting from the back. Goalkeepers, defenders. We'll get into the just a review of the squad this season, the players, the tactics, the performance. That is all coming up. But let's go back, because we all enjoyed that CPL final with Forge FC securing their third title in 4 seasons and their fourth consecutive CPL final appearance in just 4 seasons as a league. Let's go all the way back, though. All the way back in April. The date, April 10th. Out west, Pacific FC hosting Forge FC. That would be the start of the journey for Forge FC. It was a loss. It was a rematch of the final the previous year. Forge looked a lot different in that opening match. Not only different from how this squad would look by the end of the season, but just different from the squad that had played in a final the year before. A lot of turnover, new faces, some faces gone. The core, though, pretty much intact. And just to give you kind of a reference here, this is the lineup that Forge put out for various, there was injuries, there were illnesses. Forge still trying to figure out their roster, plugging holes. They only had a couple of healthy defenders. Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic, who would go on to win Defender of the Year, had not yet been moved back to the back line yet. He played holding midfield in this one, and he scored, actually. Forge's only goal in this match. But the back line, Dominic Samuel, Garvin Matusala were your center backs. Fullbacks, Ashton Morgan. Abubakar Sissoko was playing fullback, filling in for some injuries. Remember, Rama wasn't part of this team yet. Chris Kalongo started in net. Tristan Henry was unavailable. Kalongo, by the way, was fantastic in his pro debut as a young guy. But even in the midfield, Hojab Rapport hadn't quite fit into his holding midfield role yet. He was playing a little more advanced in this match. Becker was the other midfielder. Schwanier Campbell played on the flanks, so Borges wasn't available for the first couple of matches. So this team looked a lot different than it would end up looking at the end of the year. But this match was important because it really set the stage. Forge put out their lineup, they looked at the results, and they were able to get a feel for they needed, you have to crawl before you can walk type of thing. This match was important for Forge in so many ways. Let's take you back. 2-1 was the final. Ashton Gangué-Ruzic scoring the only goal for Forge. Here's Bobby Smirniotis post-match after the season opener.
Games come down to details. If you see today's game, has 2 set pieces on either side, and those are the details of today and early on in the season. I thought it was great. We've had some excellent performances. We have a goalkeeper who's playing his first his debut. Gets scored on the first 5 minutes and then comes up big after that. I think you got to look at those things. Kwesi Poku has to come into the game early on for Ashton. Very good, but I thought we're very good, and somehow we're keeping up our tradition of not winning on day one of the CPL. Well, the one thing we have is a lot of versatility in the lineup. You look at today, and due to some small knocks, we're missing players like Tristan Henry, Tristan Borges, Emery Welshman. who are back home, and just for precautionary reasons, you don't want anything to get worse as we go forward. But the one thing that we do is we have depth in the team, so we can easily adjust things. And on many days you would have noticed that these guys were missing from the field today, because I thought our quality was very good. So I'm very happy with seeing the guys and how they stepped into the games. And some guys have to step in and play important roles, like Chris Kalongo in the goal, and Kwesi Poku, who comes in. It's not easy sometimes coming in so early into the game, as a substitute. And it was an important role he had to play in some of the tactical stuff that we were working with on the left side of the pitch today. So I thought, that's what you need your depth for, and I think that's very important in how you build the club and how you build success over long term.
And there begins the defensive third of the 2022 season for Forge FC. Now, a lot happened in this first third. You had a lot of debuts, a lot of firsts in terms of pro goals, or first goals for guys who were debuting in their Forge uniform. What else do we? We had hat tricks. We had the Toronto FC match in that opening third. We had the Forge youth clinics. So some stuff going on off the field as well. Let's go back though. Home opener, April 16th. Forge coming off that season opening loss to Pacific. The lineup would start to take shape here. And Alessandre Gangué-Ruzic. You couldn't have scripted this better. He scores the winner for Pacific in the final the year prior. The goal that breaks the hearts of Forge and Forge fans across Hamilton. Comes back, home debut. His first match at Tim Hortons Field since that winning goal, and he scores his first goal as a member of Forge FC, and what a goal it was. One Soccer with the call.
Obviously, winning the CPL final, to bring them on board, it only adds to the quality that they already had.
First opportunity dealt with! My word, what a rocket! From well outside the box, and he's scoring again at Tim Hortons Field. This time in orange, it's Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic, this time doing it for Forge.
Now, that home opening match was against Cavalry FC. It would end in a 2-2 draw, but Forge would have to claw back because they were down 2-1 in the second half. Coming on as a sub, David Choinière. And now, you talk about kind of spinning a narrative here. This is all going to come together, because I want you to remember who scored these first two goals for Forge FC in their home opener, and then who would score the two goals for Forge in the CPL final. David Choinière comes off the bench, scores. Gangué-Ruzic goal was unbelievable. But now, let's bring One Soccer back in, because here's what happened after Choinière got on the pitch.
Obviously, doing what he's doing.
Becker was trying to pick that out. Cavalry defense went to ground. Choinière! In the 90th minute, David does it again, and it's one of his.
So much foreshadowing here with Gangué-Ruzic, Choinière scoring the two goals for Forge to start their home schedule and then to end the season as CPL champions. Of course, we're going to get to that as well, but that's coming up much later. Gangué-Ruzic scores his first. Now, he was one of the two players formerly of Pacific that came to Forge, expected to play major roles this season. Gangué-Ruzic did. Taryn Campbell on April 23rd. It took a couple of matches for him to get comfortable, but Campbell scored his first and second goals in a Forge kit on April 23rd against Edmonton. It was a 3-0 win for Forge. Here's the calls.
And penalty is awarded. There was no doubt contact. First for Forge, Taryn Campbell, stopped by Vikla, but the rebound is put away. Nicely for Chris, back heel, into space now. Gangué-Ruzic flicked back on. Here's the cross looking for Campbell. Taryn has his brace. The dam has burst and Campbell is back on his scoring form.
Forge FC still trying to find their game. Would play a Canadian Championship match. It was on May 11th. It was against Outremont. The winner of this match, Outremont, a semi-pro club from Quebec. Again, the Canadian Championship, beautiful thing, a way for these clubs to get together. The winner of this match would move on to travel to Quebec to face CF Montreal of Major League Soccer. Forge FC with a 2-0 win at home over Outremont, paving the way for that upcoming match against Montreal. Before they got to that point, though, a player who played a massive role for Forge this year. Great pedigree, a lot of unknowns, though. Malik Olawabi Belawu makes his debut. He only played 5 minutes. It was on May 14th. It was in a 1-all home draw against Atletico Ottawa. But he would go from playing 5 minutes in that matchup to 90 minutes fairly consistently after that. Game in, game out. Now, that was May 14th. Also on May 14th, Noah Jensen. He had made appearances this season, but he scored his first goal as a pro. It was such a beautiful goal. An incredible curler, and it really kind of, it was that moment for you to take notice. Because a lot had been talked about Noah Jensen coming in. A lot of similarities to Kyle Becker. He's been a captain everywhere he's played. Again, came from the NCAA ranks, where just in his second year at Boston College, he was given the captaincy, strong leadership, work ethic. Let's just say no one works harder than Noah Jensen. A lot might work just as hard, but no one works harder than Noah Jensen day in, day out, whether it's training, whether it's on match day, whether it's off the pitch. Noah Jensen, though, scoring a beautiful goal. The first in limited playing time this year. I mean, he didn't get consistent matches or playing time, yet finishing with 3 goals was impressive. His first, though, a beauty on May 14th, and that was he scored the only goal for Forge in that draw against Atletico.
They had it picked off by Taron Campbell. Espejo comes forward, puts his head down, but can't take it away from Tristan Borges. Now into the area, opens up to his weaker right foot, finds Noah Jensen, another long-range effort! Jensen's done it! Noah Jensen, just 1 minute into the second half, fires a missile.
Now, 6 days later, Forge FC would play at Halifax. They would dominate the Wanderers. All I remember, the main thing I remember anyway, going into that match and doing my shows, was that Halifax was very tough at home. And they had been tough in the early parts of the year. Very difficult place to play. Forge, though, goes in, dominates, wins 4-0. That was also the debut of Razart Rama. And the Forge backline would never be the same. That moment, Rama comes in, again, new to the country, new to the league. Some familiarity with Bobby Smirniotis, but new teammates. Difficult, English was difficult for him. He's come a long way, by the way. English got really good really quick. But when he first came in, he struggled. This was all new for him. Stepped in immediately. Played in that 4-0 win against Halifax and contributed. Was a big factor. Was all over the ball. Name mentioned so many times. Involved in the attack. Involved defensively, which you can expect. We got a glimpse of that style from Rama, that physicality. That 50-50, no ball is 50-50 when Rama is in the air. It's always at least 51% in favor of Rama. And it was a debut you'd remember because he ended up being a very key cog in this Forge FC squad and in their success down the stretch from the midway point to the final third into the playoffs and in that CPL final. So that day you want to mark that one in your calendar, May 21st, Rama's debut. After that, a low light, but also a turning point. Forge FC on the road in Quebec, taking on CF Montreal. They lose 3-0. After that match, Bobby Smirniotis calls it the worst half. Speaking about the first half of that match, he called it the worst half of football in the club's history. Here was Bobby after that loss against Montreal.
the worst half of football we've ever played in that first half. Comes down to that. You can't come into these matches and not put the energy that's needed. You know, these matches need energy. These matches need a lot of movement. Something we talked about, and we just didn't have it to start the match. I wish I knew what the answer was, but I don't have that. But it simply comes down to that. That's the worst half of football we've played in our 3.5 years of existence, and we've played in big matches before. We've played in these matches, so it's not the event or whatever is going on. It's another game that's on a Wednesday night. So that's, I think, what it comes down to.
Something definitely changed after that. This was a club that, at that point, said, we don't want to feel that way ever again. And they turned things around. They scored a win at Edmonton, a one where they had to constantly battle from behind. They won 4-3 in that match, and that was on May 31st. Tristan Borges, we haven't even mentioned his name, except for the fact that he didn't get to play in the first couple of matches. Borges with a hat trick. So Borges' arrival, officially, it felt like it was on that day, May 31st, and it was a hat trick. Here's One Soccer calling all 3 of Borges' goals in that 4-3 win against Edmonton.
Saint under pressure from Bacias, puts it into a space where Lockery has his boots full and turned over from Higgins. Here's Emery Welshman, finds Kyle Becker, open is Borges, one touch, the shot, and the equalizer. Far too easy for Forge as they pick apart Edmonton this time. A mistake as the Eddies try to clear it out the back. Vackel is irate. It's Welshman for Becker for Borges, and Tristan's not going to miss from there. Brama stays with it. Gets across Poku, the closest Forge attacking player. Becker returns it to him. Nice movement again, it's Borges! Banks his brace, and finally Forge able to unlock the Edmonton low block. They work it from right to left. Becker starts pulling some strings. Poku comes over to provide an outlet. Threaded in behind for Bacias. Cross for Borges looking for the hat trick. And the referee points to the spot. Tristan had done enough to win the penalty. There he goes. Tristan Borges taking his time. Steps up and he beats Vacla. It is a third for Borges. They double their advantage.
Wasn't pretty, but it was Forge showing they can win in different ways. And a club that didn't get rattled or thrown off their game after going down against an Edmonton squad they were expected to come in and win handily against. Now, maybe they were looking ahead. Maybe. Because Toronto FC would arrive in Hamilton to play Forge FC at Tim Hortons Field, a postponed Canadian Championship match from 2020. I think it was. I just remember saying 2020 a lot ahead of that match. What a match this was. Forge FC proving that they could hang with a Major League Soccer club after that performance against CF Montreal, which was, less than 10 days prior. I think it was 10 days before that. Not the result they wanted, not the performance they wanted. They make up for it at home against Toronto FC. They would fall in penalties. But in that match, Tristan Borges scored a beautiful goal for Forge. It would go to PKs. Forge, by the way, the better club for 90 minutes. Deserved a better result. Didn't get it. Got unlucky when it came to kicks. In fact, they had a penalty earlier in the match and missed that. So just so many opportunities for Forge to take a win and to be crowned Canadian champions. Didn't go their way, but they were still proud of their efforts. Here was Bobby Smirniotis after that match.
Yeah, you could say at least we played our game. I think at least we were the dominant team on the field for 90 minutes. The guys were excellent tactically. We were very good. I don't know what the shot count is, but if you look at the chances both on goal and off the goal, especially in the zones we were getting at, it was a very good performance from the guys, and I just talked to them and they have to be proud of it. It's going to be tough for this evening, but you perform like this, you win a lot of games. That's for sure. It stings in the end the way the result goes, but that's the cruelty of this beautiful game. That's why we love it, and that's why I think for a lot of people who were sitting in the stands today, I think they walk away from here being quite entertained And it's a great night for Canadian soccer. Obviously not what Forge wanted, but I think we have to look at it sometimes in a bigger picture. And I think you've seen two clubs out there who played football, two clubs that play their brand of football. We stuck to our football, and as a neutral, you don't know what the difference in the teams are.
Yeah, and Forge was feeling good, despite. I mean, they weren't feeling. Let's contextualize this for a moment. Upset, disappointed in the loss, but feeling good about the way they played, and they proved to themselves they could hang. Not only that, but outplay Toronto FC. And also, I mean, for those of you the crowd was unbelievable. It was packed. It was loud. You had dueling supporter sections with TFC and the Barton Street Battalion sitting sections across from each other. Forge would come out of that, win back-to-back games against Pacific and Halifax by a combined score of 6-0, so they were feeling it. Also, in that first third, the Forge FC Youth Soccer Skills Clinic. Now, this had been something that the clubs missed. With COVID, with bubbles, they couldn't really get out into the community as much as they wanted to. Now this season, they had an opportunity to really connect, and they made no mistake and did not waste any time. Really, these events, just the demand was so high that, there were sellouts. Fans, we couldn't even accommodate the amount of fans and children and families that wanted to be a part of these clinics and all of these activities that were part of the game, but kind of outside of it. Even, things like families on the pitch and all these different events that happened, Soupy in the park, the Forge takeover in the park stuff. But July 6th was the Forge FC Youth Clinic. Huge success. The players had so much fun. You had Noah Jensen out there, Taryn Campbell. You had Ali Hojab-Rapport out there. You had Kwesi Poku, Malik Oluwabi-Bellewu, Abubakar Sissoko. So many players took part in this and really embraced it. They were coaches. They got to coach youth, teach them soccer skills at Tim Hortons Field. And I remember speaking with Hojab-Rapport specifically, and he enjoyed it so much. And here's what he had to say.
There's a lot of skill out here. There's a lot of skill in Hamilton. There's some good players out here.
Do you remember being that age, playing soccer?
Yeah, I do, actually. That's what we were talking to T about before. Being that age, having our shin guards covering our whole leg. Now they just cover a little part, the ankle protectors and everything. But yeah, a couple memories have come back.
Something that stood out to me is how serious the kids are taking it. They're not messing around out there.
No, not at all. Some of these kids are ready to play. They got their shin pads pulled up, socks pulled up. They got their boots on, and they're ready to come and be the best player out here.
Yeah, we were just talking about the benefit of something like this for the community, for the kids, and for you guys as well.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we want to grow football, and if you can grow it in your little cities, big cities, then it's great. I mean, you can bring these young kids out. They can see the team. They get to know Forge. They get involved in the sport, and they become more interested in soccer as a whole.
Hojab-Rapport, we're not going to get too deep into the midfield yet. That's for part 2. But Hojab-Rapport, who ended up settling into that holding midfielder position, probably, you can argue it, but I'm not going to argue it, the best holding midfielder in the Canadian Premier League this season. Even the way he was able to play box to box when they needed him to. Hojab-Rapport, an amazing first year with Forge, and you have to expect there are more to come. But his play allowed a guy like Alex Session-Yodi-Janssen, who masterfully played that same position for 3 years prior to this season, because of injuries, was asked to play on the back line, played center back, ended up becoming defender of the year. This Forge FC club, the best goals against in the league, best club in the league, just even in terms of passing. Alex Session-Yodi-Janssen leading the league in passes. The back line, as much credit as the attack of Forge FC gets because of the way they play, because of that front foot attack they play in that possession game. Typically, your attack is going to get a lot of attention, and even the midfield. The defense kind of gets left out here, but a lot of changes this year, a lot of new faces, a lot of movement. At the end of the day, the back line not only held up it proved to be the top defensive unit in the Canadian Premier League. And with that, we bring in our guest to help break down that defensive third of Forge FC, and we'll review and even look ahead a little bit. Alex Gangué-Ruzic, soccer analyst, covers the CPL for One Soccer and CanPL.ca, and he joins us now.
You talk about what an unusual season it was. It was a rocky season. The CONCACAF League last year, the Champions League this year, it finally seemed to wear on Forge. It felt like in the other years they just kept on rolling. They obviously, won the first 2 years, made it to the final, and fell so short last year. But it felt like now it was all kind of catching up to them. But if you look at what went on, I think overall across the team, there were some constants that kind of weathered the ship and allowed some new faces to prosper. And I think, the backline, Tristan Henry, he was one of the constants, at least in this roster, played a lot of minutes in goal as he has since, year one. He fits the system. He's a very important leader back there. And then you add Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic. That one was crucial because some of the injuries back there would have, destroyed a lot of teams, and even, it almost came close to destroying Forge, but having Urciuoli Janssen drop back and, handling whoever was beside him, it was a Garvin Matusala, if it was, the few games that Dan Crutzen was there at the end of the year, you look at some of the others guys, Dom Samuel, slipping in here from time to time, and those sort of options. It was good to always have a constant back there, especially in the defensive line where, forward injuries always suck, but there's always that element of, okay, you can tend to replace them a little easier because there's guys who are going to, come back into the roster. There's more rotation, whereas center backs, you love to have some consistency. You love to have guys that are there throughout the year. I think another guy you can throw in that maybe helped is through the halfway point when things really started to stabilize was Rezart Rama, of course, that fullback. But not having some constant faces as there's injuries, etc. Those guys were immense to keeping the ship steady.
Yeah, and it's so funny because, had Daniel Crutzen had not got injured, Urciuoli Janssen's probably playing midfield this season, which would have been difficult because, Hojab Rapport did such a good job as we'll get to the midfield in a moment, but it's just the way things play out when you looked at that and Tristan Henry didn't even play in the opener. It was Chris Kalongo. So game one, you're wondering like, what's this team going to do? There aren't many healthy bodies on the back line. A lot of new faces. How's this going to work? But it all kind of came together. Matusala was injured at different points this season. You mentioned Crutzen. Dominic Samuel had some injuries this year. And even at that fullback position, Johnny Grant was banged up. And, even, Kwesi Poku, who played some time at fullback, was banged up at different points. So, Urciuoli Janssen actually was probably just that one fixture, which you just didn't expect to see. Some of the newer faces, and I want to talk about Malik Alawabi Bellewu specifically because this was his first pro season, an unknown if you were a Forge fan or even just a CPL follower. But Malik came in and he played some really important minutes for Forge at key parts this season.
Yeah, I think it was maybe we talk about injuries presenting a problem, but also every time there's a problem, there's an opportunity. And certainly he was one of the faces that benefited. I mean, he came with a very interesting pedigree, having played in Italy, raised in England, etc. That's, very intriguing profile. And I think he showed that. I think the fact that, Bobby Spiniotis had the confidence to start him in leg one of the playoffs against Cowboy, for example, that's always a big vote of confidence from your head coach that he trusts a young player in a situation when he has so many key veterans. And I think there's a lot to like with this game in terms of how he plays on the ball, the sort of composure that he has, because he's still very young. I mean, very early 20s, 21, if I'm not mistaken. So for a center back, it's always a tough position. So that sort of composure on the ball, you have to be excited about. And then there's obviously a lot of growth on the defensive side. I think he fit into the Forge system and helped them maintain that defensive solidity that they've become known for. I mean, yes, sometimes their best defense is almost just holding onto the ball and keeping the ball away from the goal, but he helps do that as well. So he kind of ticked a lot of boxes that Forge tends to look for in their defenders. I mean, we talk about Urciuoli Janssen. One of the reasons he thrived is because he's so good at holding onto the ball and keeping up the field. And him and and Bellewu, they kind of complement each other in that regard.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not one of those people who always thinks that their team, there's like a conspiracy among the refs in the league that they're out to get your team. I'm not that person. However, I will say, for whatever reason, I don't know that Tristan Henry gets the recognition he sometimes deserves. I don't know what it is. And I'm not even just talking about the voting for, keeper of the year, but I mean, here's a guy that top of the league all season, clean sheet in a final. He's not called upon. He doesn't get a ton of work because of the way his club plays with ball possession. But when he was called on, I mean, I can count, more fingers than I have. How many times Henry had a big stop, in the 90th minute, in the 92nd minute, in the 88th minute. When he's called upon, he's just there. It's like having this just reliable, you don't even think about him because he's so reliable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always tough with goalkeepers because those who make maybe a lot of saves might get noticed, but there's the flip side that there's a 50-50% chance. Usually if you're getting a lot of saves, usually you don't play in front of the greatest or behind, the greatest defense. And sometimes you might make a lot of saves, but you might let a lot of goals in. And it's kind of that battle of, okay, when you're a goalkeeper, when you're facing little shots, because then in that case, a lot of them are always dangerous ones. So I think for a goalkeeper, if you're able to sustain a style where, for a guy like Tristan Henry, what's tough is that Forge allowed, few chances, few shots. But when that happens, it's always going to be of quality. So you have to be ready to sit for 85 minutes, and then the 86th minute, you're facing a breakaway. You're facing a header dead in the box. And I think, that Tristan Henry, maybe one thing that will get forgotten is that he does so well to stay on his toes and stay ready for some of those big moments. I think maybe unfortunately some of those in the past, that was something he was getting used to. There were a few moments where he'd be prone to some unfortunate lapses in his game. But I think if you look across the years, those have become fewer and fewer. And I think if you look at this past, this CPL season that he had, he really did a great job of being consistent. And I think when you play on a team like that, you need to be, because again, it's not going to be a team where you're getting 15 shots. So maybe if you let an early one, you're going to get your rhythm anyways. Like if for Ford, you let in an early goal, that could be a bit catastrophic. So it kind of, maybe not ruins, but kind of throws your game plan that's so well defined off the course that you were going on.
All right, plenty more with Alex Gangué-Ruzic coming up in part 2 and part 3. And make sure you subscribe wherever you get your Forge content, whether it's via podcast, YouTube, social media. Subscribe, turn on your notifications so you know when part 2 comes out. That's been part 1, but we just wanted to whet your appetite because plenty more coming up. We have so much to talk about, including the 6-match winning streak, Daniel Krutzen's debut this season, so many hat tricks. We have goals, Malik scoring his first goal of the season. So much coming up. Stay tuned, because we're going to talk to you very soon on the Forge Audio Network.
We are the Forge, the mighty, mighty Forge. Just don't think you understand.
The Forge Audio Network with Anthony Urciuoli. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.